हर साईनाथ शिव शंभो भजे, हर साईनाथ शिव शंभो भजे। डम 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 डमरू भजे।
Welcome to Satsang, and thank you so much for such beautiful, beautiful kirtan, and we'll ask them to play some more after Satsang so that people can stay back and enjoy some beautiful kirtan. Starting, as always, with a question that's come in advance from our global family joining us online, or however they send in the questions on social media or by email or whatever. We begin with one of those in honor of the fact that they are not able to be here with us physically on the banks of Mother Ganga. And then I'll open it up to any questions at all that anyone here has. How can I stop being afraid of happiness? How can I stop being afraid of happiness? By realizing that you deserve it. There's nothing scary about happiness. Happiness isn't the stuff that nightmares are made of. There's nothing in our evolution, our physical evolution, our spiritual evolution, nothing that would make us afraid of that. We're afraid of things that are harmful to us. Wild animals, tigers and snakes and heights or deep water, closed spaces, the things that people have fears and phobias about are things that actually can harm us. Happiness is the opposite. Happiness is that which we all want. And yet, the questioner of this has touched on something really deep, because so many of us live in a way that is exactly opposite of that which brings us happiness. We do things that we think, my God, but I knew that was just going to make me miserable. I knew that was going to end in disaster. I knew we would fight. I knew that it would ruin the evening or the weekend or the relationship. I knew that I would lose my job if I did this. I knew. But we do it because on some very deep level, there's something inside of us that doesn't want us to be happy. You think, well, that doesn't really make any sense. It's good for our health. It feels good. It's what we're yearning for. Why would we shoot ourselves in the foot? I mean, it's one thing when you make an honest mistake. But when a lot of us look at the choices and the decisions that we make, so much of the way that we live, you realize this is not a simple misguided attempt or an honest mistake. This is a very deep-seated self-sabotage in order to ensure that I'm not happy. So Isha, our questioner, has touched upon something really deep. And the reason that we are afraid of happiness is because inside of ourselves, we don't believe that we deserve it. And so in order to become happy, it creates so much conflict in us. I don't deserve this. I shouldn't have it. It's not right. I'm not good enough. It's going to be taken away. It won't last. It can't be real. They've got the wrong person. Right? How many of us have been in a beautiful relationship with someone? A good friend, best friend, a romantic partner, whatever it may be. And you get that sense of, they don't really know me. If they really knew me, they wouldn't actually love me so much. Or someone really is wonderful to you. They appreciate you so much. And you think, well, that's because you don't really know me. Or that's just because you have rose-colored glasses. That's just because you see the divine. Look at how we are so unable, but also unwilling to actually accept the beauty and the divinity of our own selves. And that's because on deep levels, for a variety of different reasons, based on our own families of origin, our own situations, we think that we don't deserve that happiness. And so we need to keep it away. Maybe we were told when we were young, either directly or indirectly, you're stupid, you're worthless, you're no good. You're not as good as your brother, sister, cousin, neighbor. You're stupid, you're lazy, you're irresponsible, you'll never amount to anything. Good for nothing. Right? There's a lot of different vocabulary words that get used. There's a lot of different language. Some of it is verbal, some of it is nonverbal. But a lot of us get that when we're young, again, either directly or indirectly. And because we get given it at a young age when we're so suggestible and so vulnerable and our whole sense of self is being formed, and especially because so frequently it's given to us by people we trust, a parent, a teacher, a family member, that we take it in as truth. I am worthless. I am irresponsible. I am lazy. I am good for nothing. And so in order to maintain our loyalty to that person, in order to maintain our loyalty to what we've always thought about ourselves, we have to make sure that we don't actually ever succeed. We have to make sure that we don't actually thrive, that we don't actually experience joy, because then that would turn everything we always had thought about ourselves into a lie, which would turn whoever told us that into a liar. And that's not something that most of our psyches really want to go through. And so it's a lot easier to just make sure that we don't experience happiness, to keep ourselves small, to keep ourselves failing, to keep ourselves alone, to keep ourselves miserable, so that the one who told us that will be right. And we can stay loyal to them, to that way of thinking. Another reason a lot of us are afraid of happiness is because it takes away all the excuses that we have for why we are not living the lives that we know we should be living, why we're not giving and sharing and serving. Because, oh my God, if I'm miserable, if I'm suffering from severe depression and anxiety, well, then I've got a really good reason not to be sharing my light with the world. I've got a really good reason not to be fulfilling my dharma, my purpose here on earth. A good reason not to be serving the world with my gifts. And so, if I allow myself to be happy, well, then I can no longer hide under the covers of depression and anxiety and misery. Then suddenly I've got to show up. Show up as a being of light. Show up as arms, hands of the divine here on earth. But Isha, what I can tell you is being happy is your birthright. It is the core of who you are. And every minute that you live cowering from happiness, you're cowering from yourself, from the truth of who you are. And so it's just a matter of time until you have to unfold that. The universe is really patient. You don't want to do it this life, no problem. You can come back and do it next life. But that's what you're here for, is to see the truth of who you are. And that truth of who you are is a being of light, a being of love, a being of joy. And so it's time to stop cowering from that and to allow yourself to see that. For all of us to allow ourselves to see that. Because that's true not only about Isha, but it's true about all of us. We're spirit. We have bodies. Our bodies are beautiful. They're wonderful tools. But who we really are is spirit, soul, consciousness, divinity, love, truth. And we're here to open up our eyes to be able to see that. So however long you want to wait is okay. But you'll just have to keep coming back to do it over and over again. So when you know you've got something to do, you can't actually procrastinate forever. And at the end of the day, it's only going to bring you joy. It's happiness we're talking about here. It's not doing the dishes or taking out the trash or cleaning up the room or balancing your checkbook or whatever else we procrastinate. The end result of this isn't a headache. It's joy. So whatever you think, whatever someone may have told you or implied, whatever illusion you're living in, let it go. You deserve happiness. It is the nature of who you are. Other questions? Yes.
Pranam. My question is, what a person should be, emotional or practical?
What was the first part? What?
Person should be emotional or practical in life.
Should we be emotional or practical? The head or the heart?
Yeah. So because Shri Krishna has subsided emotions of Pandavas, then only they won. So this is my question.
So it's interesting. We say the head or the heart, but it's actually not reason and emotions, and here's why. Emotions actually take place in the head. Emotions are not actually of the heart. They're in the brain. They're chemical and electrical patterns of energy in the brain. They're fleeting. Joy, fear, despair, ecstasy, boredom, frustration. We kind of go in and out. In and out. They fleet. And anything chemical can affect them. Not getting enough sleep, being dehydrated, eating certain foods, fasting, not getting enough sleep, intake of alcohol or drugs. I mean, there's anything that impacts the chemistry of your brain is going to impact your emotions. When we say not to make decisions based on emotions, it doesn't mean not to use your heart. A lot of people think, well, if we say not to use your emotions, it means don't use my heart. It means I only should use my rational mind. And that's not actually the answer. There's three things going on here. One is what we would call our rational mind, which is wonderful. For all things that can be weighed and measured. Decisions you have to make yourself a good list of the pros and the cons. Checkbook needs to be balanced. Mathematical problem needs to be solved. You have to get from point A to point B in a foreign place. You don't know the way. You need to read a map and understand. This is all rational mind stuff. It's wonderful. As long as what it's looking at is something separate from self. What the rational mind cannot know is the self. It cannot look inward, which is why when we meditate, the whole goal is to quiet the rational mind. The rational mind is the one who, as you go into meditation, says, this is such a waste of time. I knew it wouldn't work. I've got so much to do. My God, I haven't gotten one thing ticked off my to-do list today. Here I am. It's never going to work. I know it's not going to work. This is ridiculous. Has it been 20 minutes yet? This is the workings of what you would call the rational mind. The more you listen to it, the more you realize how utterly irrational it actually is, embarrassingly so. But euphemistically, we're going to call it the rational mind, even though it's actually the chaotic mind. That's what you want to stop or slow down or quiet when you sit to meditate. Not so that you can feel emotions, because the emotions are actually a product of that chaotic mind. I see something that makes me angry. I see something that makes me frustrated. Somebody sends me an email, a text message. Suddenly I'm all upset. What we want to tap into is actually an intuitive heart, not an emotional heart. The intuitive heart is what you could call the sixth sense. And that's our way of knowing. Not through accumulation of facts, not because I've weighed the pros and the cons, not because I've held something at an arm's distance and checked it off, but just because I know. In the same way that a caterpillar knows how to become a butterfly, that a seed knows how to sprout and become a tree, that a tree growing in the forest knows to grow sideways instead of straight up. It's amazing. You walk through a forest, almost all the trees grow straight up. And then every once in a while you find a tree growing absolutely horizontal to the ground. Why? Because in that spot, if that tree grew straight up, it wouldn't get enough light. Now they live through light, through the practice of photosynthesis. That's how the tree makes its energy, it's how it lives. And somehow that tree knew, I'm going to grow sideways. If I grow straight up, I'm going to die. I'm going to suffocate. Grow sideways. How? Through what I call an intelligence in the universe. Our ability to tap into that is what we call intuition. It's that sense of knowing that isn't from a book, that isn't from a lecture, that isn't from Google. You just know. Like all of these things in nature, just know. Nobody told them, there was no course, no training manual, not even a Bhagavad Gita for them. Nothing. All they have is some ability to tap into some kind of wisdom that tells the caterpillar, not today, not today, not today, now, today, go. I have no idea how, but I love it. Because it proves to me that there is that wisdom that exists, that intelligence that exists. How does the tree know to grow sideways? It's programmed to grow straight up, but it knows. So when we talk about making decisions in our life, it's not reasonable or unreasonable mind versus chaotic emotions. It's mental framework, the rational, the irrational, the academic, the emotional, all of that on one side, and this intuitive heart on the other side. And what I would actually say is both of them are useful. I mean, I'm an academic at heart in the first half of my life of training. I love science, I love academia, I love learning. And it's wonderful when what you need to do is balance a checkbook or get from point A to point B. Some people have that intuition. I don't. If you put me in the middle of some random city and said, all right, you're supposed to be at, you're at point A, you need to be at point B, use your intuition, I'd never make it. I have no sense of direction. I'm very glad at those times to have maps, to have an ability to follow directions, to be able to understand, this street, okay, we were here, there's a landmark, north, south, east, west, left, right. It's really helpful. It's really helpful when you want to plan things, execute things, implement things. It's a wonderful tool. But you've also got another wonderful tool that you don't want to neglect, and that's the intuition. And in aspects relating to yourself, to the core of who you are here on planet Earth. There's no equation that can help you. There's no app that can help you. There's no map that can help you. There's nothing that's better than your own intuitive heart. So when he says don't be emotional, it means don't go up and down. Don't lose your grounding. When you think of someone who's too emotional, it means they're ungrounded. They're just going up and down. You're nice to them, they're happy. You're not nice to them, they're sad. All the traffic lights are green on their way home from the office. It's a great day. All the traffic lights are red. It's an awful day. He means get a hold of yourself. Anchor yourself. Ground yourself, for God's sakes. Stop bouncing all over the place. Like the ball in a pinball machine. Hitting your head against everything. Turn on a light here, ring a bell over there. He's saying get a hold of yourself. Anchor in something deep. Use your wisdom. Not just the wisdom of the rational mind, but your intuitive heart. That's what he gets him into as he starts taking him along the path of yoga. It's a path of sinking into your intuition. Sinking into the knowing of thyself. So that's the path. Other questions? Yes.
Namaste. So, how to tap into that intuition?
How to tap into that? It's always there, but we have to quiet the mind. The mind is very loud. And sometimes the intuition is really loud. If you go back and you think over your life, chances are there'll be at least one moment in your life where you really felt something. Maybe you heard it as a voice. Maybe you just felt it in your body. Maybe you just knew it, and it felt loud. But usually intuition is somewhat quieter. It requires being tapped into. And so if I go to sit to meditate, and my mind is doing that thing that the mind does, that says, I really don't have time to meditate today because I've really got to get into the office early because I know that guy is going to try to tell the boss that he did all the work on that project and I've got to get there before he does. Oh, God, but you know what? It's going to be traffic today. He's definitely going to get there first. The boss is going to hate me. My bosses always hate me. I don't know what that is. So, if I do that, I could go on for the full 15, 20, 45, 60 minutes of my meditation, however long it is that I've decided I'm going to sit and meditate. I could go the whole time. And I haven't tapped into anything. All I've done is I've just let my mind run wild. I've essentially given it a stage. Like, I'm not going to do anything with my body, so the mind doesn't have to figure anything else out. It can just run totally rampant. And that's why what we try to do is quiet it. And that's why we use practices of a mantra, of focusing on our breath, of focusing on our third eye, of open-eyed meditations, watching a candle flame, watching the flowing waters of Ganga, whatever it is that we are meditating upon or with. These are all ways to get the mind to become quiet so that I can tap into my heart. Another good practice, though, is to really start giving it a voice. Imagine that you were a school teacher, a good school teacher, and you were someone who wanted all the kids in your class to have a chance. So rather than only picking on the kids who immediately raised their hands with, "I know the answer," you actually made sure to call upon every child in the class, whether they raised their hands or not. And if there'd be a discussion going on, rather than listening only to the ones who talk all the time, you'd reach out and you'd say, "What do you think about this? We haven't heard from you today. What do you have to say?" You wouldn't put them on the spot. You wouldn't call them up to the chalkboard to do the math problem that maybe they didn't understand. But in a discussion about a passage you had read maybe, or whatever it might be, you would consciously reach out and you'd say, "What do you think about it?" And you would slowly get that child to speak more, to contribute more. And then they would get in the habit of doing so. In the same way, our intuition, because most of us have essentially pushed it away, consciously or unconsciously, for so long, it bubbles up and our mind is like, "Shh, that's crazy. Shh, you don't know anything. Shh, that'll fail. That's going to make me look like a fool." And we constantly push it away. "Oh, I'm much too old for that. Oh, I'm much too young for that." Oh. And we just constantly are like swatting at it. It keeps trying to speak to us and we swat it away. So it becomes quiet. So in the beginning, you've got to really turn to it. And, maybe not in the situation I gave, like you're in a strange city, you need to figure out where you're going, use your intuition. But maybe in other situations where you've got a decision to make. Maybe not the biggest decision of your life ever, but maybe just a simple thing. Whatever it may be during the course of your day, but start relegating decisions to your intuition and just see where it takes you. You've got a choice to make instead of your pros and cons list this time. Just ask your intuition and go with it. Don't second guess it. Don't debate it. But make sure when you do so that what you're tapping into is intuition, not impulse. Because being intuitive doesn't mean being impulsive. That which pushes impulse is usually either desire or fear. Something we're grabbing or something we're pushing away. Intuition is much deeper. So make sure before you have it make the decision for you that you take some moments of meditation, that you quiet yourself, that you make sure that you're not jumping in desire or fear. And then just see what speaks from within you and go with it. And just, make a personal commitment that, okay, every day at least one decision. Doesn't have to be a huge decision. Takes you a while to start trusting it, that's okay. A lot of us get afraid, oh my God, what if it, sends me in the wrong direction? So you can give it small decisions to make at first, but make a commitment that every day, one decision you're going to let be made just by your intuition. And what you'll start to see is actually how beautifully it guides you. And then you start to give it more and more responsibility, because you start to trust it more and more. And I'm not against pros and cons lists. I love them. If I've got a big decision to make, I'm going to want to use all the tools at my disposal, my rational mind and my intuitive heart. But for most of the stuff that are day-to-day decisions, day-to-day choices, they're not that big. Most of us do just what we are programmed and habituated to do. We don't even think about it. We just do it. Give your intuition an option, an opportunity to maybe send you down a different path today. Maybe you're going to have a different type of morning today. Maybe you're going to talk to a different type of person. Do something different on your lunch hour. Whatever it may be. But just listen to it. And then start to trust it and befriend it. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. Namaste.
Of course. We'll take this as our last question this evening.
Sometimes when I sit for meditation, many times it's very lovely, but sometimes I feel like I tune into a part of myself which is just a sort of constant screaming, and I'm not sure what to do about it.
She said when she starts to meditate, she finds that she taps into a part of herself that seems just like this constant screaming inside. You're tapping into something very deep. Most of us have a lot of layers of our being. And so, in a gross oversimplification, we'll say the core level, and this isn't an oversimplification, this is deep, the core level is divine. And that's true for all of us. The absolute core of who we are is divine, meaning it's peaceful, it's joyful, it's one with all. Then most of us have a layer on top of that, which is some kind of abject misery. And it takes different forms. That scream, that anger is there for a lot of people. Rage is what a lot of our layers there are made up of. There's actually a form of psychology. It's not very much in vogue now, but it was a few decades ago, called primal scream. And it was a form of therapy that was rooted in the belief, and it's not a form that I ever either studied or practiced or on any side, so I can't speak to its validity, but it's very interesting because the philosophy is that there's different screams that we scream in our life, and that in order to really heal, we need to go back to the scream that we screamed as we came out of the birth canal and were born. Because every baby screams when they're born. If the baby doesn't scream, there's a problem with the baby. And that in the same way that a lot of forms of therapy want to bring you back in a lot of different ways, this form was all about literally getting people to scream and scream and scream and scream until the scream that emerged was that scream when they came out of the womb. So this layer of rage can be from actual aspects of our childhood, things that happened. Could be past life stuff. Or it could be literally the scream of the baby essentially evicted from Eden. I mean, imagine you've spent 9 months in this really beautiful situation. And then suddenly, through no fault of your own, with a lot of stress and pressure and force and suffocation and whatnot, suddenly you're essentially ejected into a world that's freezing. It's not warm and soft and wet, and it's freezing. You no longer feel the heartbeat. You're no longer being rocked. Now you're, whisked off and thrown on a scale and they're cutting you. I mean, who knows what else? So it may be that. Whatever the cause is, it doesn't matter what the cause is. And then on top of that layer, a lot of us have what you call personality. And that's kind of what we move through the world with. Now, for some people, there's more layers even above that, different layers of personality and whatnot. But in this oversimplification, we'll call it just 3 layers. The truth, the divinity, the core. Then this abject misery, which in most cases is rage, but not always. Sometimes it's fear. And on top of that is the personality. It's not surprising that when you tap in to a practice that takes you below the level of personality, that you hit rage. Don't worry about it. Keep going, because there's something below it. What happens to a lot of us when we start to meditate or get into any kind of deep spiritual work or even deep emotional work is we stop there because it's terrifying. My God, the last thing we want to do is be face to face with that rage or with that fear. And so we back away. But actually, what you need to do is stay with it and just keep going. You don't need to analyze it. If something specific keeps coming up, set aside a time in your non-meditative day to analyze it, to look at it, maybe to talk to somebody about it. Not during your meditation, though. During your meditation, notice it, be aware of it, and just keep sinking. Imagine that you are a scuba diver. And you've got an oxygen tank, you're totally safe. You've got an infinite amount of time and oxygen in that tank. And you're sinking, you're dropping deeply into that core of the self. And you get below the tentacles of this personality, the masks and the roles and the stories and the dramas and all of that. And you hit this rage. Keep going. Just keep going. Just keep going. Think about it like, some seaweed that's just kind of grabbed your legs. It doesn't mean go back up to the shore. Seaweed is pretty close to the surface. It's not that far deep. You want to keep going down. You want to go down to where the real beauty is. Now you may find that in between that rage and the core, you may find another level. And it's worth mentioning if you do, which we're going to call the void. That's this, oh my God, I am nothing. But it's a terrifying nothingness. You haven't yet hit the nothingness that's the same as everythingness. It's that, oh my God, if there's no personality and there's not even this rage, fear, scream. I've dropped into the black hole of nothingness. And again, just keep going. Just know that on the other side of that is actually the truth of yourself. So don't worry about it. Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means that we all have these layers, and you're going deep. But you just have to keep going deeper. So whatever practice you're using that took you into that, just keep using it. Just keep going. Just keep going down. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful day to our family joining us from all over the world through the gift of technology. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And so much love to you.